The interesting thing with traumatic brain injury, and especially like, chronic brain injury, is it just kind of happens slowly over time. And, when we obviously had our conversation and some of the stuff I've gone back and over the last 10 plus years, 20 plus years, when you talk about concussions, when I came in the NFL, they told me I would know I had a concussion when I got knocked unconscious. So if you get knocked unconscious, it's a concussion. When I left the NFL, I remember I was in my 10th year and we're going through the same talk. They actually were like, hey, you get a concussion when you hit and there's any form of disorientation. So you get your bell rung, your eyes go crooked. All of a sudden, you feel lightheaded, like, out of body experience. Based upon that assessment, how many concussions do you think you've had? And I remember being like 70,000.
Right.
I've only been knocked unconscious maybe one or two times, but I mean, how many times have I had my bell rung? Pretty much every single play of every game. And, maybe 10, 20, 30 times in practice. I mean, dude, we hit with our heads. It was part of the deal.
Yep.
So when I retired from the NFL, and I went to Dr. Amen and was in that NFL clinic or the NFL study on traumatic brain and went to the Amen clinic for it. They did all that brain mapping and they did a bunch of stuff. And the part of my brain that was actually damaged was over here in my left frontal lobe. And I think you're 100% right in that when the body shuts down or a part of the brain gets damaged, it finds a different way. It just creates new pathways. And, that goes back to Dr. Bueller's work. I remember when I went into Dr. Bueller and I hobbled in there. And after 3 days, I came sprinting out and I asked Dr. Bueller, I'm like, why is this? He goes like, the best athletes in the world are the best athletes because they learn how to compensate around injury. So like all of a sudden you get injured, something stops firing and your athletic, blueprint, your understanding of movement just changes slightly and your body finds a new way to do something. Somebody else just physically can't do it. The best athletes just keep finding a way to recruit and to work around it. Then all of a sudden one day you get to the point where the straw breaks the camel's back and enough things are wrong where you can't do it anymore. And that was what happened with me. All of a sudden I was playing, started 16 games, I go get hurt. And physically, I just couldn't do it anymore. And it wasn't until I went and saw Dr. Bueller and he worked on me that I realized, oh shit. One, if I'd met this man 10 years ago, I'd probably still be playing the NFL. And the scariest part was if I had met him 10 years ago and continued to play in the NFL, how much more fucked up would my brain be? And that was really like my first step into understanding it. The other thing, I think or I talked to you about the cranial manipulation he did for me, where he put the balloon and did like the rhinoplasty. They put a balloon in your nose and then they expand it and he cracked all the sutures in my skull. And it like relieved this pressure that I didn't even know I had and I didn't realize was there until it was gone.
You
So
got
that
to
was a
tell
huge.
people too. You got to let them know that like what a suture is, because the first time you told me that, and I know I'm an idiot, but like I'm thinking it's because your head is sewn up, but that's a different
Yeah.
term in your cranium, right?
Yeah, so people think that the cranium is actually like fixed. It's not. Like if you have a baby, I mean their skulls are pretty flexible, which allows them to get through the birth canal, and then over time, so all the different pieces and they're connected with what's called sutures, they harden over time, and then our skull becomes hard. But it actually still flexes and moves unless you get a ton of calcification and a lot of other stuff that comes from traumatic brain injury, and then that stuff gets scarred down, and then no longer can the brain or the skull flex and start getting movement, which allows for the blood to pump through and a bunch of other stuff. So actually what happened from all the hits, my brain became scarred down with all the scar tissue and calcification, and going back and actually cracking that completely changed. It was like one of those like moments where it happened and I felt like my life changed. Yeah, I
Uh,
was like, oh man, like it was like it was like I was like in like underwater pressure. When you're like at 60 feet, like just at two atmospheres, and you feel that pressure, and you don't necessarily notice it because you've been there so long, and then you come up and you're like, oh man, I got rid of that stuff. The
yeah,
uh,
I'm eager to try that.
the other one that really tripped me out was as I retired. I remember it was like 2008, 2009. I was going through a bunch of stuff. I think I was looking for like a computer cord, and I went and found as I was digging through, I found a bunch of papers that I'd written in college, and I found my thesis from grad school. So I opened it up as I'm reading through it. I was like, holy shit. One, I was a good writer. And two, I don't even know if I have the ability to access that level of information anymore. And it was like, that's when I realized it was like a bridge too far. And I thought to myself, man, I got to really do something. And that's where this like constant pursuit of trying to fix this stuff, but also reading and writing, developing a new skills. And I got really into this and being like, can I recapture what I once had?
That's
And
a
that,
it's a fantastic self awareness. just in what you just described, to be able to go, I'm not what I once was, and also endeavor to do something about it, I mean, is incredible.
Well, I mean, people just kind of get stuck in this like hopelessness where like, and you said you were stuck in this kind of dark hopelessness where you didn't know how to get out. And you either got to, pick up a phone and call a lifeline and hopefully have somebody drag you out of it, or you have to have this really interesting self-realization, which I had, where, and this is something the other day, Neil Kamamura, from Forged and Fire, who makes all those knives, he stopped by, Power Athlete, and we were kind of hanging out. And my training partner in college, a guy named Drake Parker, his uncle, his dad's brother, was Ed Parker, Elvis's bodyguard, and the start of American Kempo.
Yep.
So in the summers, we'd go over and stay at Drake's house, and we'd go train in Hawaii, and he lived in Kaneohe. And I was talking to, I was telling Neil, I was like, yeah, we used to go eat at this place. We'd go to Makapu, we'd go to Sandy's, and I was kind of giving him the layout of our day. We'd wake up, we'd lift weights, we'd eat, we'd go, body surf and kind of hang around. And he was like, how long ago was this? I'm like, I was like 18, 19, 20. He's like, the fact that you remember all of these names, and you probably, if we put you there, could get back. I'm like, 100%. So there's like a really interesting thing within my memory where the memories from when I was a kid up and through college are all pretty fixed. And then for that 10 years in the NFL, all of a sudden, like I lost a ton of ability to retain memories and information. And then since that has ended, all of a sudden now I felt like my memory has come back, because I mean, we'll get on the podcast and they'll ask me questions and I can like remember moments when I was a little kid and my dad and I, or my brothers, things we said, things we do that are just so crystal clear, where if somebody asked me, hey, December 31, 2005, you played in this game. Do you remember playing in that game? And I'd be like, man, I'd have to watch the video. I'd have to watch the tape to even like access that memory. So it's pretty interesting and I've talked to doctors about this. They're like, there is like neuroplasticity. Your brain, when it's healthy, is supposed to remember these things and supposed to this. But when you start adding all this trauma that looks like not only hitting with your head every play, but, let's say, anti-inflammatories, maybe drinking too much. I mean, all these other things that can, exasperate it. He's like, it becomes a real problem. And the fact that you've come out the other side and are starting to regain and have regained much of what you lost within that 10 years just goes to show that you can heal your brain. This idea that, brain injury is permanent, there's no way to fix it, I think is total bullshit. And when I was told that, I took the same stance where I'm like, you know what? I don't like the answers you're giving me. So I'm going to go find new people and I'm going to investigate this. I'm going to find a way to fix this.
I'm going back. I'm a loaded freight train and I'm right on track. I'm smoking.